We understand that people have places to be, people have places to go, but and we know that some of you are catching up with old friends. We'd like to take this moment to also ask if anybody has a memory or a story that they'd like to share, to please feel more than welcome to come and share your precious memories of your time in YCW with everyone else. And we're just going around taking photos. You would not like your face up on social media, please let me know first so that I'm aware of it. Thank you. With that being said, is there anyone that would like to start us off with their story? Please introduce your name, the time you were in YCW, how long you were there for, and then your story.
My name is Tim Lockery. Back in the late 70s, I left school. I got in touch with my church. I used to go to church every Sunday. Don't do it now, but I came across a youth group, and to be honest with you, before I left school, I was in a thing called the YCS, Young Christian Students. So I knew that the church had and I still hold all of those friends dear to my heart. Good on you.
My name is Brian Smitty. What a great night. Many of you may know about my life. Frank Hornby. Some of you may remember me. His father, my father, used to run the SP in Williamstown. I joined the News Port YCW in 1954 after riding a bush bike through flood waters. My father and I lived in a railway guard's van with about 50 dish-lickers, greyhounds. The cockies were getting 1,000 pence a pound for a bull in those days. The Korean War, we were getting 20 pounds for any dog we could get because we had the arse out of our pants. Excuse the expression, but I come from Williamstown. In those days it was very poor. Millionaires live there now, not too many poor people. The YCW changed my life. Newport Height, and my very dear friend Kevin Gorman. I was there for 12 months, and one of the great priests in this world, Father Charlie McCann, said to me, living at Williamstown, this is not very good for you. Father died, come and live out there. With Kevin and some other young men and women, we got YCW going there. Some of the greatest leaders going. There's another one here tonight, if he's still around. Kevin Ryan. You there, Kev? No, gone. Gone. Great bloke. Champion people. West Australia went there in 1960 to one good ISIS.
Today. I was involved in the YCW Bennett's and Forest Hill parishes back in the 1990s. And then I was asked to be on the Holdings board. I stopped to have my children, and a few years later I got a phone call and a catch up from Alan Smitty, who I adore, and who asked me to come back on the board. So Holdings consists of 30 members, and some of them are in the room tonight, and we have 10 directors that are elected into those positions. We invest the money, and I'm sure everyone in this room could give us advice on how to invest that money better, but we take it.
I did YCW at YCS at school, Dara and Melbourne, and it was a natural progression to go from that to YCW in our parish at St Mary's East Melbourne. And for us it was formation on Friday nights, and then a lot of social activities. We used to run a dance where we invited people around Melbourne to come to, get posters, we just ourselves. We ran everything ourselves. We didn't ask adults, should we? Our dance was called Eminon, which is no name backwards. We had a football team, which joined other teams in competition, and I can still remember the football song, which I can bore you with if you'd like. There's any plum, any port, is it Melbourne, any good, is it Melbourne, any good. From back to forward line, our system is fine for courage where we know. While we're wearing the colours of blue and white, the finals will take them and show them all our might. Any plum, any port, is it Melbourne, any good, is it Melbourne, any good. And for a young adult, YCW was life-changing. Just about every night of the week we were doing something in YCW. We had badminton competitions, played squash, we did country trips where the boys played football, the girls played netball, and then there'd be a dance afterwards. And I remember one time being billeted at Geelong, because we billeted with families and from the teams, and the girl I was billeted with, her father ran the jail, and it was I had to go behind this blue stone wall. I don't think I slept that night, but made the dance the next day. What else? We used to go to Lana, my Wamba, for training. We had a Miss YCW competition. I was a runner-up. And we had a big ball at St Kilda Town Hall after all the different groups around Melbourne fundraised. And we filled that town hall, no alcohol. We had a wonderful time. I remember it was Judy Pomeroy, who trained us all. And yeah, because of that, a lot of the young couples that knew each other from YCW actually ended up as lifetime married partners. So it was a wonderful way of being a young adult.
Having spoken to a lot of you, I've been asking about, I suppose, what the young people are doing in Melbourne and the young people in the YCW in particular. We have a team of amazing volunteers, some that joined us today, Gio and Nicole and Judy, who unfortunately had to go home early, alongside Huda and Amadou, who do our Youth Food Project, which is our action in Melbourne at the moment, which is really about bringing young people in Melbourne's West together. It's about combating social isolation, building a sense of belonging, and thinking about how the cost of living crisis is impacting people in terms of food scarcity. So we create a meal, loads of leftovers for them to take home, and we build a community around that, where we then, in our time together, employ the See Judge Act, that is so unique and specific to YCW, that empowers the people that engage in YCW to take action in their own lives. YCW in Australia in general has actions across Australia. There's Student Work Life, which is about protecting the rights of students who start working, so young workers. That's happening in Perth and Parramatta as well, and Adelaide. Cicilina, I'm sure, will speak about all the amazing things happening in Adelaide. She's the Youth Engagement Officer there. And alongside that, there's a community kitchen in Parramatta servicing about 70 people every week. And a plethora of amazing things around Australia. So YCW has loads of young people working to keep social justice moving and employing our See Judge Act everywhere. I'm going to hand over to Joe or Cicilina.
Hello, my name is Giuseppe, and I am a main volunteer member down in Adelaide, and I've been part of YCW for, I think, 4 years now, and I first joined in 2022, but was actually part of the chart movement back when I was in Carter College, which was YCS, and I've been part of that. I was part of that back in 2016 all the way to 2019. I think it's had a massive impact in my life and how I've been brought up, opening up a lot of opportunities. We've been privileged enough down in Adelaide to be able to connect our YCW to our YCS movement now. And so because of that, a lot of YCS graduates are now moving into our YCW down in Adelaide. So the numbers are slowly growing, but we focus more on quality over quantity. And because of this moment, I've had the privilege and honor to be able to attend the International Centenary, which was held in Belgium, and it was such an eye-opening experience to see the multitude of people who come together for one single purpose. I think, if anything, it lit a fire within me to continue to push and be part of the movement further. And I want to be able to evangelize and reach out to those who are able to have the opportunity to be part of movements such as YCW, and hopefully it continues to grow even further with the help of everyone. And I hope we continue to communicate with one another, keep the network growing, because I know sometimes in our own states it can be isolating, focus on what we're doing, but keeping that connection going, I think, is a powerful way for us to continue to support one another. Thank you very much.
Hi guys, my name's Joe Magri. I'm the national mentor for the YCW. I'm from Sydney. What is different today, there aren't many priests, or probably no priests involved in the YCW, so it's a lot of former members. I was involved in the 1980s as a member. We come back and we mentor the young people. So in each city, there are teams of mentors, and I'm the national mentor or national collaborator. Some people may know the term as, and I work with the national team, and I'm proud, and it enriches my life, and I thank the young people for their ongoing commitment to the CJJ, to the solidarity, and to bringing about justice. And as some of the people said, we work with, closely with the YCS. So we're seeing young people ages 13, 14 going into the workplace. They don't know what a pay slip is. So we're doing basic education about that, as you can imagine. We work a lot with international students. You've heard Nicole talk, and Gio. They're international students, and they are exploited and work in very vulnerable situations. So we continue to struggle to bring about justice in their lives and in the workplace and in our community. And look, I think we all know it's the community and our church today, it is tough. And I often talk about it as we're holding the light in a lot of darkness, but it continues on. And we're always enriched by these new people coming through. So yes, I just want to maybe finish off by today I met somebody from Singapore. He's here. Back in 1987 when I joined the movement, I was part of a letter writing campaign to free the full-timer that was jailed in Singapore. They were taken by the secret police at 5 o'clock in the morning. Here am I as a young 20-year-old writing these letter of solidarity. And I met Samuel here, and we were just sharing the story. It was incredible. So after all this time, we're here wearing the solidarity.
Is there anybody else that would like to share?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Selena, and as already mentioned, I'm from Adelaide YCW. I feel very honoured to be a part of such a movement that has brought together so many people coming through those doors and seeing all the different generations gathered here today, and a room full of testimonies and stories. So it's been truly inspiring, and I know you've already heard the actions that's been going on. So I just want to take this time for behalf of the YCW today to thank you for all your efforts and laying the foundation for us today so that we can build upon it. And we hope, just as you have done already, that we can inspire the future generation as well. So thank you for being here today. And just before we head off, I'd love to grab a group photo, because who knows who'll be around for the next centenary. So capture all your faces. So thank you and have a good night.
Is there anybody else that would like to share the stories prior to us coming to the floor?
I'm going to give a
quite a different perspective. I'm Marie Harris. I worked in the Ballarat Diocese as the coordinator of the YCS back in the mid-1960s into the early 1970s. And I worked in conjunction with the chaplain, Father Kevin Murphy, who died at the age of 96 weeks of age. So it's all very close and raw for me at the moment. The Sea Judging Act of Cardine has absolutely changed my life. It infiltrates nearly everything I do still, decades later. And I was one of the, when I became involved with the YCS, strongly supported by the YCW and the adult lay apostolate in the Ballarat Diocese. I was also one of the first Catholic lay teachers in the Ballarat Diocese. There were only about half a dozen of us. And I began using Cardine's philosophy with my grade 3 and 4 students. And we actually took situations that were in the current environment, and I used to have them sitting on the floor around me, and I had a reel-to-reel tape recorder. And a lot of this was published at the time in religious education magazines, but one of them was at the time when Jackie Kennedy married Onassis. And I don't know whether any of you remember that, but that was such a high-powered event. And we discussed it. One of the children brought it along, wanting to discuss this. And my mother says this, and my dad says that, and one got up on a chair and yelled, and there was a whole lot of reflection that we facilitated. We brought it back to the gospel about whoever's without sin cast the first stone. So that was the sort of thing that we did. And as a result of the work I did in religious education, along those lines, the Catholic Diocese, the adult lay apostolate diocese, raised a scholarship, and I studied religious education in Belgium. And so there were a lot of YCW people around Belgium at that time that I was very involved in, and then visited YCS organisations actually all around the world. But after I had my children, I went back to study, to do a social work degree at Melbourne University. And my first essay I wrote, I talked about Cardine Out and the Sea Judging Act. Don't know how it came in, can't even remember what the essay was about. My lecturer was Dr. Jacques Boulet, who was here earlier tonight, who happened to be, I didn't know at the time, a Belgian who'd worked in Belgium with Carter. And that night, while he was correcting my essay, he rang me up, absolutely so excited to have someone who'd been, was connected with Cardine. He hadn't long been in Australia at that time. And as a result of that, some 4 or 5 years later, I went on to do a PhD with him supervising it. The whole PhD is intertwined with the impact of Cardine on my work, my professional work. It's called Becoming a Reflective Practitioner in an Age of Uncertainty. And I have translated the Sea Judging Act. I have a leadership development company. This is the 20th year, called People Empowered. And I've translated, so most of my work is with a professional community. So I had to translate it into something that would impact their work. So C for me is that we can only really see today when we're in dialogue with other people. Because there's such a diversity of opinion that in dialogue with other people, we will see a lot more clearly what is happening. And then the judge I've turned into reflection, because it's in reflection that we can, with other people, that we begin to clarify what is really happening and be able to form an opinion about it. An opinion that's, you know, quite includes that diversity of ideas, and then of course action. And so I really, it saddens me actually. I don't think anything's happening in the Ballarat diocese, and it saddens me enormously. About 10 years ago, a whole group of us got together here in Melbourne to see if we could re-energise the church of the 1960s and 70s. It was such an exciting place to be a part of. And we met for 18 months and couldn't work out how to do it. And then said to one another, we need to be grateful to have been part of that era. It was such an important time for formation. I don't know whether anybody uses that word formation anymore, but that was pivotal to the YCW. Formation and personhood. Personhood was the other thing. And so that's what we did.
Maybe I'll give last minute calls from anyone else that would like.
Kevin Lord is my name. I was recruited to the YCW in 1958. I was 17 years old. 5 weeks after, we had a weekly meeting, and the priest introduced us to the whole idea. And then 5 weeks later, he said, "You're the president of the group." And we formed it. And they sent me off to Myer to do a training program. And we started the branch, the higher branch of the YCW in January 1958. It grew enormously for 16 years, probably the longest branch of the YCW in Melbourne. And numerous members became leaders of the Melbourne YCW. The story that you've just heard about why was it so successful, in my opinion, I'll say this. First of all, it had the support, the endorsement of the church. And every time a priest went to the seminary, or a young bloke went to the seminary, he was introduced to the concept of the lay apostle in the YCW, and the priest in charge of the Melbourne Seminary was Charlie May. He was an Irishman, and he really supported it. I'll briefly just say a couple of things here because I want to go on to something that happened a bit later. In my opinion, there were a number of pretty clear ideas why it was so successful. First of all, it had the endorsement, the YCW had the endorsement of the church, of the local bishop, number one. And the people who introduced the YCW to young people was the priest coming out of the seminary, and they had an idea of what was going on. The next thing that I think was very important about the development was that it was class-based. It was working class-based. The next thing was, primarily, it was amongst young men. Now, I know that might seem, it's not modern, but that's why, in my opinion, it was so successful. It was like the AFL footy now, you have the men and the women. So that was the reason it was so good, and then there was a proper training program for all the leaders. I was in it and active for about 4 years. Then I left, like we all, well, most of us did, and you get old enough and you leave. I'm sorry, there's someone down on the way down there. Look, then I got injured at work a few years later, and I read Cardine's book, Blame It Into Action, and there's a little paragraph in it that really shocked me, and he said, unless there's an adult movement, all the work of the young people will be wasted. So, what I did then, that really shocked me, because there was no adult movement, and the YCW was declining. So I got together a few of my former mates at the YCW, and we met for a couple of months, and it didn't work. So I didn't know what to do, so we left it. And then one day, in about 2004, I read an article online written by Stefan, and he was talking about is the lay apostle going to work. So we got in contact with each other, and then we formed the Cardine Community Australia with the intention of getting former YCW people in their adult life to take up the lay apostolate. Now, it's not necessarily a working class initiative. You have to find.
2-minute story. I found myself in Cambodia. That's a long story. But with a group of Cambodian people who, during the war which was going on at this time, had gathered together a team of 6 women and 6 men. And they said, we have to listen to what's going on out into the villages, and we have to think about that, and we have to act on it. So I sat around with them, and they actually did. They didn't do anything in villages until they'd slept on the ground with the people, 1 or 2 at a time, until they could hear what was happening. And they would come back once a week, and they would sit in the circle, and they would reflect on that, and they would decide on what their next action. Now, into all of this comes Bill Armstrong, who can't be here tonight, as you know, and Margaret. Bill was looking at overseas development, so he brought himself up to Battenberg, and he listened to what they were doing, and he said, they're all Buddhists. So I said, yeah, they're all Buddhists. And Buddhism hates seeing killing that's going on all around. And he said, so what are they doing? And he listened, and he said, Jane, you've got the bloody YCW in Buddhism. That's really what I wanted to say, that instinctively, if people are drenched in what's happening around them, they can't help but think, what are we going to do? Well, they had their strong Buddhist faith, and they knew they could not let that killing go on, and they also could not let the hatred go on, and it brought it the other way. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you very much. Can we give everyone who shared another big round of applause? Thank you so much, everyone, especially for those who shared, for giving us the opportunities to hear